go to you and talk about a poll we had last hour that is just, again, just so disheartening about our former party. A party that said in this Wall Street Journal poll they were more likely to vote for Donald Trump because he got caught stealing military secrets. He got caught stealing nuclear secrets. He got caught stealing secrets to invade Iran. He got caught stealing assessments of America's military weaknesses. He got caught trying to lead a conspiracy to have fraudulent electors to steal millions of votes from people and from Americans in 7 states. He got caught trying to rig the Georgia election, telling the Republican Secretary of State who recorded the call, the Republican, hey, just get me one more vote. Right. Then I lost by, give me 11,000 votes or so. Just find them out there. And on and on and on. And I just can't even believe, I have to believe now, there are people out there, a lot of Republicans out there, that actually are more likely to vote for him because he stole nuclear secrets. What does that say about the Republican Party, our former party?
Well, it doesn't say anything that we haven't seen for a while. I mean, this is a cult, but this poll strikes me as a giant middle finger from the Republican base, basically saying, we're in with this guy. We don't care what he did. We don't care about the coup. We don't care about the criminality. We don't care about the fraud. We don't care about the rape. He is our guy. And we're going to ride with him, not only despite what he has done, but what he will do in the future. So, yes, the poll is alarming. It is also a warning the direction the party is going. Anyone who thinks that this party is going to develop a conscience and is going to stand up against Donald Trump, or that it would provide any guardrails for a Trump 2.0 presidency, I think is incredibly naive. So it confirms something that's been coming for some time, but I don't think that we should understate how alarming it is.
Yeah, and Willie, Charlie said they're sticking with Donald Trump. They're sticking with Donald Trump over America. I mean, George Conway said they were un-American last hour because they support a guy that stole nuclear secrets. They support a party that's actually blocking the promotion of hundreds of military men and women, that's standing in the way of military readiness, that hates our intel community now, that hates the FBI now, that hates any law enforcement, that doesn't do what helps Donald Trump. If any law enforcement agency tries to hold Donald Trump accountable, they hate them. If any law enforcement officers try to stop Donald Trump's mob from going in and wrecking the United States Capitol and beating up cops with flags, bloodying their heads, almost killing them. And the fact 4 ended up dying after January 6th. Their families say because of January 6th and because of Donald Trump's riots, they don't give a damn about those Capitol Hill cops. In fact, they mock them on TV. And so you can go on and on and on. It seems not only have they decided to stick with Donald Trump over other candidates, they've decided to stick with Donald Trump over America.
Welcome to a earlier edition of RBN Live Tuesdays. I'm one of your hosts. I'm CJ. What's up, Nick?
Hey, what's poppin', my friends, my family? Welcome back. Welcome back to RBN. As you guys see, that is a high effort news reporting from the channel that Mediaite ranked as some of the most reliable news outlets in the country.
Just a lie.
That opinionated garbage that you just heard from Morning Joe, we got quite a few more to show you guys.
Yeah.
Mediaite claim that they are the most reliable, non-biased news source. As you just see, they run campaign ads for Joe Biden every goddamn segment. It just can't. And there's another cringe one. I don't know if you probably seen this one. where Morning Joe Scarborough was like, Biden, people keep underestimating Biden. He's still doing that. He's still doing it. CJ doing this spill. People underestimating Biden. Biden been so great. Down the line, if you look at everything, he's been amazing. But according to Mediaite, we're propaganda.
We're the ones in the wrong, according to them.
Yeah,
and we do got a couple of clips. That was the least one that we're gonna be interrupting. So I decided to start with that one first. But yeah, we got probably 2 other segments or clips maybe from Morning Joe about this rematch that
CJ.
they just cannot believe. But go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that whenever we or anyone who's not a liberal say that the Trump prosecution, the Trump indictments, and Biden weaponizing his Justice Department to go after Trump to hurt him in the election, thus election interference, they say we are repeating conspiracy theories when we say that. They say, oh, are you saying that we only go after Trump because we want to win the election? What are you, a Republican sympathizer? Meanwhile, in this segment, and in quite a few segments I have seen over the course of the last week or two, you have people that saying, why aren't the Trump indictments hurting Trump in the polls? They are quite literally admitting their strategy on air to use the Trump indictments to hurt Trump so Joe Biden can win. So then they go on air like, oh my God, I can't believe this is not working. Why aren't people falling for the Trump indictment thing? Why aren't people supporting Joe Biden? You guys are admitting this is political. Because if it wasn't political, you guys would have went after George W. Bush. You guys would have went after John Bolton, who's a war criminal, who CNN had on the show and platform, right? But they're not going after all the criminals in Washington, D.C., are they? They're going after their chief political rival. And you had a legal expert that even said, man, we got to be careful about this because if you guys prosecute Trump over this, you're getting all of you guys. Everyone do shit that you can technically use the legal system, twist the law in your way to prosecute people. And that is what even non-Trump supporting lawyers have said. Like, this is very squirrely to go after a president, go after someone who's your chief rival on something that's so weak. It's something that they view banana republics doing, right? But CJ, anything else you want? I'll pass it to you because I know we got quite a few.
Yeah. I'll bring up the video again and then start from probably the clip that we were talking about when we were both saying we saw the same clip, which is basically in the beginning because they jump right into it. Like they don't take any time. So I'm gonna rewind it and you can hear the anguish, Nick, in their voices. Like they are in pain because it almost feels like they're not in pain because he has different beliefs in how the government's going to be ran. It's like they're in pain because it's like being in pain for a KKK member who's also the mayor of a city and they're at the moment where they have to take the sheet off. It's like, oh, damn. And they don't want the person who's unsheeted, if you will, be in the face of the country. Donald Trump it's like a clear window into what America actually looks like and the way he talks and what he wants to do, how he associates with other countries, or how he said, you're not putting up enough money for this NATO thing. He just says it in plain English. They don't want this sort of representation of what imperialism is because they're still trying to play this tap dance, Nick. They're still trying to play. We're not this. What do you mean? NATO is not that. We're not offensive. We're defensive. They can't say that with the face of this guy as the leader of that. They can't pull that off, and they know it. So there's that, and then there's the fact that he's just not on board with the military-industrial complex in the same way. I'm not saying he's anti-war. He's just not on board in the same way that they are, and that's another thing that they don't like. You see it with his opinion on Ukraine, and that's what I mean. So that's a good way to preface this Hell 2024, which is really a good title for this rematch of Donald Trump and Joe Biden. But here we go. Morning Joe this morning.
In the Republican presidential primary, growing. We'll have much more on those numbers and a hypothetical rematch of 2020 in just a moment.
Well, I got to say, Willie and we've faced this off and on since 47. Yeah. A couple of young kids coming back from the war.
Heroes, their word, not ours. Yeah.
I never said it.
I didn't either.
I never said it. But it seems every 10, 15 years, they say they're growing a little long in the tooth, Willie, but we just keep on keeping on.
Yeah, we do, despite the Wall Street Journal polling about you and me, actually, too, which was very negative.
And by the way, their small talk is pretty unbearable. If you watch it, their small talk is completely unbearable, and it shows the difference between our
exactly our whole. But the reason I played it from that point is because he mentions right there what I stopped it. He mentions how the Wall Street Journal's poll includes them. So if you go there, there's the Wall Street Journal poll is more. It's a bunch of things that they ask in that poll. One of which is about media. So that's what he's referring to, and they don't get good poll numbers in that. And the reason the Wall Street Journal, because it's the Wall Street Journal, why this poll is so devastating to their psyche and what they do for a living. But let's jump back right into it right here.
Concerning.
Horrible.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to dig into it, but this is a new tact that we just saw from Joe Biden in the White House, perhaps as we're turning the corner here now, about a year and change away from Election Day, to confront this age issue, which another poll shows is real.
Yeah.
That's kind of like when I say, would you like
all right, so it's like 45 seconds I got to go for, and then they're going to start talking about it.
It's on Saturday night. Yeah, Duke blew out.
I hate when they do this, when they pretend like sports is a top story. To me, they do that, Nick, only when it's bad news. They never do that when the poll says something bad about Donald Trump. They go, get right. Hey, look at this shit right here. Look at Donald Trump. Or they'll have some sort of historical thing that's comparing him to Richard Nixon or something like that. But when it's stuff that's bad about Joe Biden, let's shoot the shit in the beginning of the show for several minutes. They do that all the time. Let's see if they get to it.
I think it's another way. That's the closest they will ever come to try to relate to the average American. Talking about sports, so I think that's another way to do it. Because if you guys see in the small talk is unbearable, they expose how out of touch they are. Like when they just do these little small exchanges. But let's continue.
Yeah. So I'm gonna fast forward it to the part now, and that is right after this guy right here, Conway, because they got to talk about. Here we go. All right, so here we go where it's devastation, and you can hear it in their voice. And here we go.
And Donald Trump in a dead heat in a 2024 general election matchup. In the survey, 46% say they would vote for Biden, while 46% say they would vote for Trump. 8% say they are undecided. So in this conversation, mixing this in really shows you where the country's at, Joe.
Well,
and it's
Gene, I mean,
Trumpified.
Just look at the
She
numbers.
sounds like
Gene.
Sanders.
You've got 46% of Americans supporting a guy who's been indicted 4 times, indicted for stealing nuclear secrets, indicted for stealing war plans.
Look, he's doing it again.
A rapist by a New York judge.
He's doing it again. Oh, trust me, guys. These Trump political trials, these trials are not political. But hey, man, why are the poll number changing on the eve of the trial?
They don't even see how they get how they're opening a window to what they really think, and they don't even see it. Nick. They're that in that bubble. They're that immersed in this disgusting liquid and bubble of the swamp that they don't even understand that that's what they're doing. It's a shame.
Yeah. But
let's continue.
Saying that what he did was akin to rape. You've got a guy that's being charged for his illegal payoffs to porn stars I mean, we could go down the list. A
So
guy who
desperate.
started a riot on January the 6th, an insurrection, had fake electors, had this fraudulent scheme to steal votes from millions and millions of Americans in 7
Why
swing
won't Americans
states.
believe in
I
our
mean, I could go
propaganda?
on. Called the
That's why he's repeating it. It's almost torture. It's almost self-torture for himself. Because it is, because it's like he's looking at the number and he's like, man, and he's listing all the shit that he's been talking about. I can't believe this. So it's almost self-torture for both of us. And let's let him continue here.
Republican Secretary of State in Georgia and said, steal enough votes for me, find enough votes so I can steal Georgia. 46% of Americans are voting for the guy who said he would terminate the Constitution to get back into power.
They think that's
What does that even mean?
Those numbers are unbelievable.
They
but
they
yet
so
there they are. I mean, the Wall Street Journal does good polling.
maybe it's in white subculture segments, but that they think that is such a like a damning thing. You said
Yeah,
this
who
about the
gives a shit?
Constitution. Yeah, it's like
White
what?
Americans like, no, the Constitution. Like, yeah, for one, who gives a shit? Secondly, remember, Mediaite ranked Morning Joe as one of the top 3 most reliable programs.
Good
Meanwhile,
Lord.
here they are saying that one political party wants to end the Constitution. You guys want to know who won to end the Constitution? Democrats building Cop City, stealing people's Fourth Amendment rights. You want to know who else wanted to overthrow the Constitution? Joe Biden, who lost a Supreme Court case where he wanted to illegally seize the arms of anyone cops searched and seized. And then it was so extreme, the Supreme Court literally struck it down. You know the unhinged right-wing Supreme Court? Our unhinged right-wing Supreme Court saw what Joe Biden was trying to do, seizing people's guns, which would have affected who, CJ? Black, brown, indigenous, poor working class people. So Biden like, all right, let's take these people's guns. Let's have the police have the ability to seize their guns with no charge. That is what the Biden administration puts for. The Supreme Court knocked that down, right? So why didn't Joe Scarborough say Joe Biden wanted to overthrow the Constitution when he tried to seize Americans' guns illegally? You guys understand what he tried to do, and I can pull the receipt if you guys don't remember. I reported on this quite a while ago. He violated the Second and the Fourth Amendment at least. Like the Second and Fourth Amendment, the Supreme Court found Biden guilty of. They also found Biden guilty of violating the First Amendment, right? Pressuring social media companies to censor opposition. So only Trump want to throw the Constitution out? You guys see my response is not a defense of Trump at all. It's like these partisan hacks. This is the highest form of propaganda. Meanwhile, Mediaite said we do propaganda, and they rate them as reliable. You guys see how damning that article is? But let's continue.
Yeah, it's so eye-opening who they put and where they put him as to who Mediaite is. And we weren't the only ones. Even the liberal Kyle Kalinske pointed out, I was like, look, all the centrist corporate people they say have the highest credibility, and all the people who are more independent they say don't have high credibility. So anyway, but let's get back to the video.
Polling, and then any one poll can be an outlier, but there have been a lot of polls that indicate that this, if it's a Trump-Biden rematch, this is going to be a close election. And again, that stupefies me. It should not be a close election. There is no way that any substantial portion of the electorate should support Donald Trump after we saw during what we saw during the 4 years of Donald Trump's presidency, after what we have seen in the years since Donald Trump's presidency, after all the felony criminal charges filed against him in 4 cases with what is basically open and shut evidence. The man is an accused felon. 91 times or something like that, and the total number of
they're in shambles, man. You keep playing. I was like, they're in shambles.
Potentially 46% of Americans are willing to return him to the White House. It certainly lays out what this poll, I think, does. It should lay out to Democrats that this is going to be a close election. They can't take anything for granted. They should assume it's going to be decided by perhaps tens of thousands of voters in the swing states that we all know.
Now you see why Cornel West's campaign has become even more important for a movement, Nick. This is why I say all the time,
Absolutely.
this shit is such a perfect storm, Nick.
Perfect
this is such a
timing,
perfect
everything.
storm because I could not even conjure up a more perfect
Yeah,
candidate
absolutely.
than Cornel West
What a Donald?
for the Green Party and this moment. He has so much respect for all these people that bring him on the show. They really can't even really do anything. They can't really combat him. And then now when he comes and he gets his sort of interview skills sharpened, when he comes on this show, when he comes on all these independent shows, the Black Power Network, he gets these suggestions and he goes back on these networks and he looks better in his interviewing.
Absolutely,
The
CJ.
more he's doing it, they are terrified, Nick. They are
Yes.
terrified, especially after this right here. Now you can expect the smears on Cornel West. You're going to start hearing stuff back when he was 6 years old, how he was
Yep.
bullying somebody when he was 6. Watch. It's about to come out because this is it. Like they know, look, Wall Street Journal. Oh, this is real shit right here. Wall Street Journal was saying 46. And if Wall Street Journal was saying it, guess what? In real life, Donald Trump is likely winning. Donald Trump is likely winning if the Wall Street Journal, these liberal outlets, are polling even. He is likely winning because they're underpolling his people.
And then the
They're
electoral college, all that stuff. So,
yeah,
absolutely fantastic analysis. We can continue.
All know about, and they better get cracking now because there's a real risk. And I can't believe I'm saying this. There's a risk that Donald Trump could return to the White House.
There is a real risk, and he says, "I can't believe I'm saying this." Not that they don't. They knew this all along. This is why they've been pushing this so much propaganda. The reason they have to acknowledge it to their audience, Nick. They can no longer stop pretending this is a fantasy world. He's going to walk. He's going to beat him. He's beat him before. He's going to beat him again. This is easy. He's a cakewalk. And all this trying to, Ron DeSantis and look at Chris Christie. No. Now they have to say, I can't. That's why he says, I can't believe I'm saying this. Donald Trump may be elected again, even after all. Because how are you meshing his indictments with the election unless you're meaning the indictments to affect the election? You get what I'm saying? But you're trying to tell us it's not political.
CJ,
doesn't make sense. Go ahead.
This shit is so critical for them. They threw the bag at Crystal and Kyle and all these progressives. And we show you guys the old clips of Crystal advocating against succumbing to the lesser two evils. And then after we did our breakdown and after my viral tweet calling her out, there are a lot of people who used to support Crystal Ball like, holy shit, I can't believe she changed so much. It gives you whiplash to see someone so aggressively sell out. The establishment is so afraid they did whatever they could to recruit her on their side. They got Kyle Kalinske, who we show his old rant saying why he wouldn't support the Democratic Party. Now he's a straight up Democratic simp. So they did everything they can. They got Gen Z kids running out here. They got the Voss Media Industrial Complex running. They threw everything they could at this possible Trump thing and stopping third parties, and they are still failing, fam. What extremely interesting times, and it feels so good to be liberated from giving a shit about who wins because no matter who loses, I'm gonna laugh at. Like if Biden loses, I'm laughing at these morons, right? And if Trump loses, I'm laughing at the morons at MAGA that drive me crazy. There's no stress. And if I was on both sides, like I see a lot of MAGA people especially, they're like, yeah, nigga, Biden going down. Nigga, why y'all so sure? Like, I'll be nervous as shit if I was you guys in this clown-like system. But anyway, go ahead, CJ.
And to your point, and to those that might be watching who's still kind of voting red, blue, to the point, imagine not having the stress. Not having to fight a liberal, not having to fight a Trump supporter because of the other side. Imagine not going through that stress, but you're still helping your community, but you're
Absolutely,
still
CJ.
participating in community mutual aid that is helping your community. Instead of sending that $100 to the Democratic Party, you're sending it to Rome to help build a community library where he's going to house people. He's going to allow people to come in, and poor people to unhoused people to come in and take, for instance, showers. He's going to have radical books in there where kids can come, after school programs. So much stuff. You see how it's like we're helping our community regardless. Who cares is in there? Who cares who's elected? Who cares? I'm gonna be helping and raising money for a diaper run. I'm gonna be helping and raising money for school
absolutely.
supplies. Like, nothing changes because of these clowns and their show. It doesn't make any difference. So you can live that life if you're watching and you're part of the red blue game. Get out of this nonsense. It's really relief stress. Like, get out of it. That's my recommendation.
This is a great
ahead.
super chat by Frank. I'll read it real quick and I'll pass it to you. Thanks for the 499. The whole segment is about Trump. Not one mention of what people are really dealing with in this country right now. And that's such an important point, especially when I show you guys the clip I have, where they're like, what can we do to get black people on side with the Democratic Party? What can we do to get Latinos on side with the Democratic Party? They never ask, what can the Democratic Party do for black people to get them on their side? It's always, what can we do for them? What can you do for the massa? Never, oh my God, Trump is tied with Biden. Trump is such an existential threat. Trump can end our democracy. And since he's such a threat, we need to give the workers what they want so we can defeat them. You know how that narrative framing? Even if you're a hardcore class warrior capitalist, you like, nigga, I want to wage class war against the workers. I want to crush these motherfucking unions. But Trump is such a threat to our democracy. Let's give him one. You guys know they don't do that. That's how you know they don't truly believe Trump is a threat, right? People, let's continue. Great super chat. That's a fantastic super chat, Frank. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Frank. All right, back to the video. And then just notice the states. And I believe Cornel West is on the ballot. I know New York, I believe DC and Florida. I'm not sure about Georgia. I could be wrong. So these are states, because this is where leverage becomes. This is where you can see the leverage. I'm sorry to rant again, Nick. This is where you can see potential leverage in building outside of the party. They're talking about a race that is so close, and he's saying this is decided by tens of thousands. You see how much power you can build by that? Look at these clowns. They're running neck and neck. They're running neck and neck while we're building outside of it. They're going to eventually have to pander to us to a certain extent just to get, just to remain in their, to play their own sort of blue-red game. So, but let's continue with the video. I'll keep ranting, but let's continue.
Well, and there is such a disconnect, Caddy K, between the polling numbers and the reality, and a lot of Democrats are trying to figure out exactly why that is. You look inside the polls, a large number of Democrats just say Joe Biden's too old. He's too old. The numbers don't add up, though. Like, for instance, you look at the economic numbers, for instance. You go down.
That is a statement of an unhinged conspiracy theorist. Of someone whose mind is completely broken. Mediaite ranked these people as one of the most reliable news outlets. CJ, do you mind playing the last 15 seconds again? You guys listen to what you guys said. You guys said the numbers are not real. People, oh my God, there must be some disconnect. I can't understand what's going on. Like, he sounds like Marianne Williamson in a way. Well, you got your perspective. I got my perspective. He's in a completely different universe. And I want to, and I'm sorry to play this part again, but I really want to emphasize what he says here. Like, you don't get propaganda like this in other places. Listen to this part again, CJ. I just want to emphasize it. This is unhinged.
And he can't fathom that what he thinks of as something is not what you peasants think of something. That's what he can't fathom. But let's continue here.
Think about the ego of that. But let's continue.
They're trying to figure out exactly why that is. You look inside the poll, a large number of Democrats just say Joe Biden's too old. He's too
my bad.
Let's
go back. Right here. Let's see.
of thousands of voters.
I just want you guys to
the
hear
swing states that we all know about.
Like they shit on Trump supporters for
they
denying
better
facts, don't they? But listen
get
to this.
cracking now, because there's a real risk, and I can't believe I'm saying this. There's a risk that Donald Trump could return to the White House.
He's damn near
There is such a disconnect, Caddy K, between the polling numbers and the reality, and a lot of Democrats are trying
There's
to
a
figure out exactly why that
disconnect
is. You look
between the
inside
polling
poll.
numbers and reality. Why aren't people listening to our propaganda? I don't care what the facts say. Our propaganda is reality. That is unhinged Orwellian shit right there. What we say on news, our propaganda, the propaganda of one party is what's something that everyone should take as fact. That's a crazy ideology. But anyway, let's continue today.
That's a good catch. I kind of want to hear that one more time because I was talking over it a little bit. So let's go back just a few.
Listen.
I gotta get precise.
To say this. Like you got polls that showing that your position is getting blown the fuck out, and instead of like, what am I wrong about? What am I misunderstanding? What am I not gonna? Instead of saying that, he said, "Oh my God, people are completely misrepresenting the reality of my politics." It's unbelievable hubris in a lot of ways. But let's continue.
There's a real risk, and I can't believe I'm saying this. There's a risk that Donald Trump could return to the White House.
Well, and there is such a disconnect, Caddy K, between the polling numbers and the reality, and a lot of Democrats are trying to figure out exactly why that is. You look inside the poll, a large number of Democrats just say Joe Biden's too old. He's too old. The numbers don't add up, though. Like, for instance, you look at the economic numbers, for instance. You go down the list, going into Labor Day weekend, Wall Street Journal headline, resilient U.S. economy defies expectations. That's in Rupert Murdoch's.
Why won't people
Wall
believe
Street
the
Journal.
bourgeoisie headlines? Listen to people he cites as people we should take as fact. Listen to people he cites. Listen, he said Wall Street Journal. You guys probably missed it, but first he said Wall Street Journal, and now let's continue. Listen to people that he wants us to take at face value.
What I love about this particular part of the polling, the economic part of it, is that it's showing a couple of things. One, the indicators that they tell us indicates or shows a strong economy has nothing to do with workers. It has zero indication on the status of what the conditions of workers. Their indicators, Wall Street, for example, Wall Street's up. What does that have to do with us?
Exactly.
How does Wall Street being up have to do with us? We don't own stock. 84% of stock is owned by the 1%, and but 100% is controlled by them. So the little 16% or so that we have in our 401k, it's still controlled by the people who control the 84%. So we don't control any of it. But they're trying to act like that's an indicator. But go ahead. And I'm sorry, one more thing. When they keep saying unemployment, unemployment is not an indicator of good because guess who was all employed during slavery, Nick? Guess who was employed, Nick?
Yep.
All the slaves were employed, so we had 100% employment. You see how that's an indication for the owner, not the worker. That doesn't tell us the condition of the worker. Go ahead, Nick.
So
sorry, Ren.
Your point, no, CJ, your point is fantastic because it's either this segment or the segment I'm going to show you next, where you're going to see Joe Scarborough shits on the economy of China. When he's talking about the United States, he's like, man, the United States economy is performing strongly. We're exceeding expectations. But meanwhile, they're like, China's damn near in a recession. What indicators are you guys using? China just announced a program where they are about to greatly expand high-speed rail. I didn't get a chance to really report on this, but Xi Jinping gave us a great address. Like, we have this massive infrastructure program that we are building on. That plus the new infrastructure projects we have going on in Africa and our international our partners. We have a record amount of young people that own homes in China. God knows what metric they use. I probably got to read more into it. But they're probably look at China's GDP growth is down, so the economy is struggling. Meanwhile, the average rent in China is $400-$500. Xi Jinping was talking about how their healthcare system is flowing more efficiently than ever before. You got infrastructure projects that is exceeding expectations in China. So what metrics are they using?
They're retiring at 54. Retiring at 54. I saw that on your shit. I saw that on your tweet.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's another important metric. They want workers in the United States to work until they're 70 plus years old. You literally have Republicans and some Democrats openly advocating for that. Meanwhile, the Chinese retirement age is 54. Isn't that an indicator of how strong your economy is? Whether your workers can retire or fucking not? Anyway, I don't want to belabor the point because I may cover this more when they get to that point in my segment. Yeah. So let's continue, CJ.
Yes, sir. Let's go here.
Other Wall Street Journal articles, they talk about strong job numbers, that wages are outpacing inflation, that Americans
you a damn lie to say wages are outpacing inflation. How dare you? They don't have any more. You got to fact check that, Nick. Wages outpacing inflation. Get the fuck out of it. I mean, he's using some sort of magical like accounting to even say that. Like if you were to break that down, there's no way.
Even going by I was saying, even going by their metrics, I agree with you 100%. That's bullshit. No matter what number they pull up, but I think even going by their metric, I think he's lying there. But I gotta check that. I gotta look that up. Even going by their bullshit, I don't think that's true.
He's probably making it up.
But we know with our lived experience, we know with talking to our neighbors. Like I had a great conversation with quite a few families who can't even afford school supplies. I literally planning another event I didn't plan before to help people get clothes because quite a few people said, "Hey, yeah, school supplies is good, but I can't put clothes on my kid." Now, meanwhile, these people talk about how great the economy is, and they talk about how great wages are going up. That is not what we are seeing and feeling in our community. And what did I say before, CJ? Why do we owe the ruling class a benefit of the doubt? They're like, well, if you don't feel it, come on, look at the economy doing better. If you do not feel the economy is doing better, you do not owe them your vote. You don't have to look at GDP. It's not upon you. Like, oh my God, look at the amount of small businesses that grown. If your life does not change, improve, you do not owe them a vote. Period. I don't care what fucking numbers they show you. Anyway, let's continue, CJ.
That's a great point, Nick. And a few more minutes of this, and then it's a shorter, just a couple of brief minutes in another segment that I'll play. That's more about Joe Biden because it's kind of meshed together. This is about both of them, Joe Biden and Trump, and just the cope of what's happening and talking about how bad Trump is. So this is more of
CJ.
Yeah. Do whatever you want to do
after this because it may be the same thing. Just
yes, absolutely, just in case.
But I'll pass you.
Yeah, so let's listen a little more how they talk a little more about some of the other polling, and then we'll get to your clip just in case.
Are getting, quote, another raise because of this economy. Another Wall Street Journal. Again, I'm sorry, Republicans. Rupert Murdoch's Wall Street Journal. There's another Wall Street Journal article recently that talks about how, despite what every economist has been saying over the past couple of years, the United States economy looks like it's going to be able to stick the landing. It's going to have a smooth recovery without a recession. Again, all good news, but there's this massive disconnect. And you look at people giving disapproval, high disapproval numbers.
I'm glad you showed this part. I'm glad.
This is the part that they can't. This is the part, the 46, but this 30. Where'd it go? Oh, this 37% on the economy, the approval, and the disapproval 59. They understand that, like, economy shit, people paying more money, that's not something you can overcome. That's very hard to overcome if you're the sitting president and the economy is terrible, or at least what they want to call perception. This is facts for people. This is facts. They think just because, for example, oh, you're doing well, you're living in a house. Really? I had to move in with my cousins. I had to move in over here. That's just because I'm not on the streets. That doesn't mean I'm not doing well. My rent is up, so I'm not, you know what I mean? Just because you don't see like people in lines at, food pantries, even though you do, but I'm just saying, like, if you don't see these extreme things that they're trying to say would be indications, they're trying to say, well, everything must be going good.
Yeah, and
just because people are learning to cope with capitalism, we've been through this nonsense. Go ahead, Nick.
And to your point, CJ, it's even more absurd when you realize that they are sheltered by their own class bubble. So these millionaires, like, and Bill Maher recently did this, and he one of the few people in the universe that can make Marianne Williamson look like a leftist god. Like Bill Maher made Marianne Williamson like fucking Malcolm X. That's how bad she is, because he was like, I don't see any poor people. I don't see any of them around. And Morning Joe essentially doing the same thing. I don't see any poor people. I don't see them around. Morning Joe, who make $10 million a year. Actually, I think he make more than that, but you guys get the point. Make tens of millions of dollars a year, and they like, I don't see poor people. There must be a disconnect. Meanwhile, we look around the community like, what the hell y'all talking about? I'm like, I don't talk about this a lot, but like, fam, I'm like the only person in my immediate family that has like a working car. Like right now, we got my siblings and my cousin. They got like a car rotation thing going. My brother fucking damn near hurt his knees fixing my mother's van. So is that an indicator? How many people got functioning fucking cars? We don't have public transportation. I live in the Midwest outside the city, so there's no public transportation. Motherfuckers struggling to get around, fam. My other brother just got his car. We're like, holy shit, thank God he finally got a car. Like, does this count to these people? Does this count to these people? Because their perspective, of course, is going to be different than ours. But media is going to tell people they're more reliable than us because their class perspective is more important than ours, according to media and other people. But anyway, CJ, let's continue, because this is a part I saw as well, and this is pure cope and this is also a part I mentioned earlier in my earlier rant, where they pretend Morning Joe is not propaganda. Meanwhile, this is Joe Scarborough, and this is what he's about to say right now. He's essentially saying, y'all know the American people disagree with Biden on different issues, right? But you're wrong. He's great on every fucking thing. And wait till you get to
these people, man.
Joe Scarborough is going to explain how Joe Biden is great on literally every fucking issue, and you're just wrong. But let's play so you guys see what I'm talking about.
There we go here.
On the economy, 37% approve, 59% disapprove. Caddy, in other polls, 74% of Americans say that their economic situation is good. You look at inflation, the numbers are upside down.
So once again, as you see, he's going to go through every single thing on this list and tell you why you're wrong about it regarding Biden. But meanwhile, media thinks that Morning Joe does unbiased, non-propaganda news. You got a news anchor that is unapologetically shilling for one party, but they're the reliable news source, not RBN. Guys, they don't understand how much they fucked up, because I'm going to keep quoting that shit, and you guys see how why it's important. You guys see why it's so important that we do propaganda report, fam. So you guys see how absurd it is that other people will even rank them as credible. Media, you don't see what we see right now. You seriously don't see that Joe Scarborough is doing unhinged propaganda for one party? Anyway, sorry for that rant. Let's continue.
Inflation is cooling. It's just absolutely incredible. In improving infrastructure, he passes a bipartisan infrastructure bill, like a massive record-breaking infrastructure bill. He's upside down there. I mean, dealing with China, he's been
hold
China.
on. I did not realize something I didn't realize the first time I seen this. You guys see how he skips securing the border? Like, he talking about inflation, like inflation is great. And then he passed the infrastructure bill. Well, hold on. What about the secure the border part? Because that's something that even I've seen Democrats criticize Biden on. Because it is.
I didn't notice that. I didn't notice that.
So I just now know that for the first time. He just skips over that part straight up. So he can't even admit on one L that Biden has. Because the reason why Biden's number is so bad on securing the border, because he pissed everyone off. People on the right is pissed off. even though they probably shouldn't be as much. But then people on the left is pissed off because he's funding ICE more. So who's your constituency here on immigration? It's only that 30% that is unmovable. We talked about this before on the show. You guys gotta understand statistics in this country. In this country, there will always be 30%, around 25 to 30% that will always be unmovable, right? So when your number at 30%, that is horrible because that means the only people who support you are the most diehard partisans. So Joe just skips over that part. Anyway, let's continue some more.
Look again, we talk about it all the time. What we've been doing with our security partners in the Philippines, in Japan, in South Korea, in Australia, on and on. We could go down the entire
when we
list.
say nuclear submarines,
like, how is that an accomplishment? How is that something for the American people to judge him as a good thing? Like, what is that doing for us? I don't understand the expectation. I don't understand the expectation, but this is what they think of you, people. And I mean people, our audience. This is what they think of you. When you do not respond to their propaganda, they chastise you as being stupid. It's a disconnect because you're dumb and we're smart and you're not buying what we're selling you. That's essentially the line that they give us.
I just decided I'm gonna comment on in detail after you're done. But what you guys see here is why we do propaganda report on Morning Joe. Morning Joe is top of his fucking game when it comes to propaganda. And that's why he has the respect of the establishment and Mediaite. There's a reason why Mediaite ranks him as the most reliable. Remember, flip the chart. They're saying that Joe Scarborough is the most effective propagandist. So I actually gonna let this whole thing play because he is such a great propagandist. He fits so much bullshit in such a short amount of time. I'm like, all right, I gotta let it play some more. Because he just praised Joe Biden for sending nuclear submarines to Australia in order to escalate against China. You guys realize that what he just said, right? But I can't stop it for everything he says. So I'm going to let it play and I'll get my thoughts afterwards. But I want you guys to pay attention to how good he is at fitting so much bullshit in such a short amount of time. So, CJ, if you don't mind, go back just slightly and I'm going to let it play. Just look at what he pulls off here. It's actually quite spectacular, like in terms of a propagandist perspective. Listen to this.
It's about 30 seconds backwards. So here we go.
In improving infrastructure, he passes a bipartisan infrastructure bill, like a massive record-breaking infrastructure bill. He's upside down there. I mean, dealing with China, he's been tougher on China than any president. You look again, we talked about it all the time, what we've been doing with our security partners in the Philippines, in Japan, in South Korea, in Australia, on and on. We could go down the entire list.
The reason he's telling you without specifically telling you what the ruling class thinks of China. When you're talking about dealing with China, why are you interpreting that, Morning Joe, as to mean placing weapons in Australia? Why are you classifying dealing with China as war, preparing for war with them, as that's supposed to be a good thing? You see how he's telling you that?
Absolutely.
He's naming that has nothing to do with China in this small, narrow poll. What if the person who is taking the poll, when they say how he's dealing with China, what if they're talking about economically? You see how he reads it? He's telling you without telling you what they think, what a good strategy towards China should be. And he is saying it is a march towards war. That is what Joe Scarborough is saying. Go ahead.
That's such a great point, CJ, because that's kind of what I want to break down as well. So that's a great point because he mentioned the nuclear submarines in Australia. He talked about building military alliances between the Philippines and Japan, where Japan literally increased the military budget by 60%, a historic military budget expansion because the United States is trying to train and get Japan and Australia ready to wage war against China, which will completely destabilize and destroy the working class of the world. Do you guys understand that? But he's cheering that on as a good thing. Yeah. So this whole spill is unhinged, but you guys see how Morning Joe can mix these unhinged neocon propaganda in there. And he had people like Mediaite and other liberals just nodding along with this. And you guys wonder why you have all these liberals who are unhinged neocons now. That's why George Takei calls people traitors for not supporting the Ukraine war. He criticized people who criticize Ukraine funding in comparison to what money we get in our community because he's been radicalized by Morning Joe. Liberals in the Democratic Party has been radicalized by CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post, and their pro-war propaganda. But let's continue.
Absolutely. Here we go.
And the numbers don't add up, Caddy. And a lot of Democrats are saying it's because he's too old. That's what's underlying this entire poll is Joe Biden's numbers are low because right now Americans think he's too old to do the job.
Yeah, I wrote a piece about this in the BBC saying this is the Alice in Wonderland election. What's up is down and what's down is up because none of it seems to make sense.
They are truly offended. They are truly offended that people are buying their propaganda. Up is down, down is up. Like that's literally what you're trying to convince people. You're trying to convince people up is down, down is up. And we're saying, no, it's not. And they're saying, what's wrong with everybody? What the hell's going on here? And it is truly baffling them. And this is why, Nick, at the same time, they're trying to increase censorship. This is why we're getting strikes. This is why, Nick, this is why we're appearing in Mediaite.com. Why? Because their narrative, they've lost control of the narrative. Go ahead, Nick. I know you want to chime in.
And I don't know if you guys caught that in the beginning, but of course she writes for the BBC. Because we did enough propaganda reports where we've seen this lady on quite a few times. She's one of the most unhinged propagandist guests they bring on. Like, she's here to toe the Democratic Party empire line. So, of course, she writes for BBC. So, whenever I say the United States is the most propagandized country in the world, you know who the only people who stump me? When people say, what about the UK? What about the BBC? I'm like, yeah, good point. I still think ours is more. I think ours is worse, but good 1A, 1B. You know what I mean? So, of course, she writes in the BBC, and then she writes an article in the BBC explaining how the Americans are dumbasses who don't understand and they don't acknowledge how great Joe Biden is. Why won't Americans acknowledge Joe Biden? Unbelievable. Anyway, let's continue.
Yeah, that's what.
You have Donald Trump with a slew of indictments against him, and yet he's soaring in the Republican primary polls. And
this is another one I saw online. It's pissing them off, liberals. I saw tweets. I can't remember where it was from, but this one right here is another one where it's like, wow, because he's the same age or 3 years apart. So to them, this is in the same age sort of range. So why is it almost twice the amount? Close to being twice the amount because they are just saying age, but it's more than that because clearly people are judging what they physically see, Nick, and they're labeling it all age. They physically see that Donald Trump sounds the same that he sounded 10 years ago. He's walking the same. He's not. And then Joe Biden does not. Like, we can clearly see that. That's why it's such a lopsided poll there. But go ahead, Nick, if you wanted to.
No, to your point, and they're gonna explain why don't you're gonna see it right now? Why don't people view Donald Trump as being too old? And Joe Biden is only 3 years older than him? Because I told you guys many times, I find Trump deeply unimpressive. Especially in 2016, especially in 2020. I view him mostly as an incoherent moron for the most part. But and remember in the town hall, he is way more well-defined as a politician. Not great, but he had like quick retorts. He didn't used to have that. He used to kind of like ramble, and then he would like stumble upon a comedic gold mine. You know what I mean? That resonate among people. But he wasn't like a sharp, witty politician. At the CNN town hall, remember, he had rebukes ready for everything she said, and he high-key dismantled that CNN host. And that is not something now I don't believe that Trump could have did in 2016 and 2020. So what I'm saying is Trump, I see improvements. With Biden, he clearly declined. And people may be shocked by this, but Biden, in my view, when I look at the old Senate floor speeches, he was an extremely charismatic politician, fam. To me, he sounded like an evil villain. That's what I said on the Jimmy Dore show one day. When you look at his old Senate floor speeches, he like a James Bond villain.
Yeah.
I'm gonna increase civil asset forfeiture. Let's pass this crime bill to pass mandatory minimums. Like, if you guys want to hear a real villain speech. Look up his old Senate floor speech when he talking about expanding mandatory minimums. One of the most evil shit I ever heard in my life. Anyway, I'll let it continue, but I'll let you guys look that up if you guys are interested. But go ahead, CJ.
And Joe Biden, with an economy, as you say, you've got, unemployment at 3.8%. It's just ticked up a little bit, but it's still low. Inflation coming back down to 3%. Incredibly low by the standards of certainly of most Western countries, where it's up at 6, 7, 8%. So America is really doing much better economically. And why is it that people aren't feeling this? I mean, partly, yes, interest rates are higher, and that is hurting people, some people, and prices are still higher than they were before COVID. And I guess people are still feeling some of that. But I think you're right that there is the age factor is playing into
So you
this.
just debunked your argument.
And I know how frustrated the White House is.
Yeah, I didn't get why she said all of that.
You just debunked their argument immediately. Yeah, I know people. Yeah, interest rates are. I know people have a hard time foreign groceries. Yeah, I know people struggling, but the economy's great. Like, you just dismantled your entire argument. Play that part again, CJ. Go back. Hit the 15-second plan. I want you guys to watch her dismantle her own argument in real time, because what she says there overwrites all the other bullshit stats you just read out. I don't care about all these bullshit numbers. How do people feel when it comes to buying their groceries, paying their rent, for example? Let's watch this part again. Another damning part.
Back down to 3%. Incredibly low by the standards of certainly of most Western countries, where it's up at 6, 7, 8%. So America is really doing much better economically. And why is it that people aren't feeling this? I mean, partly, yes, interest rates are higher, and that is hurting people, some people, and prices are still higher than they were before COVID. And I guess people are still feeling some of that.
Prices are still higher.
I think you're right that there is the age factor is playing into this. And I know how frustrated the White House is on both of those counts. They hope that by sending Joe Biden out around the country, and that once more of the money that has actually been pledged in things like the CHIPS Act and the IRA actually gets out into projects around the country, then maybe they'll start to see some kind of return in terms of the polls. But the age.
Like, you guys see why there's levels to this shit, fam. You guys see how she immediately contradicts herself. Like, she's struggling here. Joe Scarborough ran through that list like a propaganda ace, fam. He's horrible at that. The black guy at the bottom middle, he's also horrible too. But it's not smooth. It's not believable. But let's continue.
The age factor, Joe Biden can try and joke about it, but it's still a looming factor. And when Mitch McConnell has incidents like he had over the weekend, like he had a couple of weeks ago, then that doesn't help the president either, because it raises again the idea that just there's a group of leadership at the top that is where there is an age question about everybody. And he's just going to have to keep stating the numbers like you just have in terms of the economy, and hoping that the American public starts giving him some recognition for an economy that is doing better than almost any Western economy in the world.
You guys see the framing?
Well, I mean,
are you talking about the Western economies in Europe that are feeling the effects of the war in Ukraine?
Yes.
Is that who you're comparing this to? Go ahead. Terrible.
But remember what we mentioned at the very beginning of the stream regarding the context? Why won't the American people fall behind Joe Biden's rhetoric? What can Joe Biden do to trick these people? Instead of, why don't Joe Biden pass policy to improve these people's lives? It's all about the workers being true. How can they change their messaging? It's so disgusting. That shows their class bias. But Mediaite ranks them as one of the most reliable news outlets. And they have class warfare oozing all over them. They watch this shit like, nigga, this is real news. Yeah, nigga, fuck those workers. Yeah, but yeah, prices are higher, nigga, but they do. You better accept this economy. They are fucking clowns, fam. But let's continue. There's still quite a bit to get to. Let's continue.
Yeah. All right.
And you look at the news front page of the New York Times today, China's economy really teetering on the brink of
look, that's what I'm talking
massive
about.
recession right now. We're doing China, Russia, please. Even our European allies. Our economy's doing better than just about any economy in the world. And yet, again, there's this massive disconnect. And you go into these poll numbers, and the massive disconnect comes from
He's trying to say that the United States is doing better than China. Is that what he's really? That's not what he's saying, Nick.
Yes,
that's not what he's saying.
I kind of spoiled this earlier because I saw that part. I spoiled this earlier. Remember, I told you guys while they trying to say, "Oh, the Biden economy," when they talk about the Biden economy is doing better than expected. Biden economy is doing better than expected. Meanwhile, China economy on the brink of destruction. You guys see the difference in the language. Like, who do you think you're fooling? Who do you think you're fooling? They're teetering on the brink. They're completely different languages there. It's unbelievable. And once again, how do you rate how great your economy is doing? How great the economy is? Xi just gave an amazing address last year when they had a new Congress, talking about all these amazing infrastructure programs they had approved, all these new buildings they was working on, high-speed road upgrades. And in fact, the average Chinese person rent is around $400-$500. The quality of life there is cheaper than ever. People are thriving there. You have young people who own their homes. Isn't that something that you should be counting? How many people own their fucking homes? You know what else they should count, CJ? How many people are hungry? America, there's a ton of people hungry. Especially in Lula, they've been working on initiatives to end hunger. And the Chinese government has lifted a record amount of people out of poverty, and they are feeding people at a higher rate than the United States. That's the number one thing you should be rating. How many homeless people do you see in China? Do they got skid rows in China? No. So what are you judging your economy? Where your compare and contrast coming from? Just propaganda. But anyway, let's continue. Oh yeah, there's another one good. Thank you for this comment, Desert Mantis. You should also look at how many people are happy. Another great point. Anyway, let's continue.
The central problem, we got to go to Lemire, and because he's obviously been closest to this. We were going to go to break because we have Frank Ford on the other side of this, who's written a book about Biden. But John, we got to bring you in here, man. I mean, the White House doesn't want to talk about age. I understand, but it colors everything. It colors everything. If you look at what he's done in foreign policy, you look at how the economy's going right now. These are numbers that should be giving any president a huge lift, and it's just not happening here.
No, and the White House, they are aware of this, and the DNC is aware of this. The re-election campaign is aware of this, and they point out with some frustration that Donald Trump is only 3 years younger than Joe Biden.
Exactly.
But yet that Wall Street Journal poll suggests, though, that
exactly.
There you see it.
Mika's so fucking annoying. Exactly. She was so happy. She was so happy to hear that point. That was funny to me. Exactly.
Of those respondents say Biden is too old. Only 47% say that Trump is. And this is a lingering sort of baked-in perception now, and that's something they were trying to overcome. Now, we should note this poll, relatively small sample. It's also done by one of the pollsters involved was sort of a Trump-affiliated Manafort group, Tony Fabrizio.
So now we got to question the poll. Now we have to question the poll. Isn't that what Trump does? What did they say when Trump would question those polls? Oh yeah, that's fake news. Oh, he's questioning this and look at that. Now you guys are questioning the poll. Because this is what you're trying to say. It's the same thing they do with judges. Are you saying because somebody appointed them that they can't be fair? Then how can we have any fairness at all? Because either it's you or them appointing them. But they're saying is no. When we appoint, it's fair. When they appoint, it's not fair. As essentially, and when we get elected, it's democracy. When they get elected, it's Russian interference. But let's continue.
So let's put that aside, though, as we look at this. It is just one poll, but it's something this White House, but the overall metrics are consistent with what we've heard with others. Age is a concern. Now, the White House looks at the other side of this, and they point to all these issues where they feel like the economy is improving. And though poll after poll suggests Americans don't feel great about it, there's underlying numbers that Americans at the same time say, well, I actually have a little more money in my pocket than I used to. Hey, I can go on a vacation now. I couldn't do that a year ago.
Right.
And they feel like that's coming. They think that'll come to the surface sometime next year, twinned with the impact of the Inflation Reduction Act and the infrastructure bill. And Americans next year will feel better about the economy. They also...
That's fantasy talk. Like, you notice, so that particular party said, that's not to us. That's not to regular people like us, Nick. He's talking to the ruling class. Calm down, guys. Calm down. Yes, this looks bad, but we're hoping with the effects of the Inflation Reduction Act, because people like us know the Inflation Reduction Act is bullshit. People that listen to their show thinks it's actually something. So hold on. We still got this. We still got that. They're still trying to give hope. I don't get it. Why are they? Do you think they're going to pivot from Joe Biden? A lot of people think Joe Biden's not going to be the nominee. A lot of people think it's over for Joe Biden. That's why we're seeing more and more of these conversations like this segment, even this segment, where they're talking about all the problems he's having. Even the allowing that on the air is an indication that it is a possibility that he's going to be replaced by a Gavin Newsom or somebody along those lines.